Welcome back to Math Chat. It is June, which only means one thing, right? Summer. If you are watching me on YouTube, you can see here I am in my dining room, just a little change of scenery to keep things interesting. And also it's summer, and that means things are crazy, right? If you are not watching on YouTube, guess what? The podcast is on YouTube now, so we can talk like we're FaceTiming. And that being said, head on over to YouTube, search up Mona Math, search up Math Chat Podcast, and you will find these episodes. If you're listening like a good old podcast, make sure you hit subscribe and so that you get notifications when the new episodes come out. This summer is going to be incredible for the podcast. I don't want you to miss an episode. Now, let me ask you, how are you doing? Are you done with the school year? Are you ready to bust down the doors and get into summer because you're still in school? I feel like every time at this time of year, even though I don't have my own classroom anymore, I still feel this way. I'm like ready to wipe the slate clean. I'm like done with this year and already looking ahead to next year, right? The thoughts are flowing. I'm thinking about things like, okay, what supplies am I going to need? Am I going to need a new planner? Do I need new manipulatives? What am I going to need? What am I going to change? What am I going to try next year? But here's the thing. Before you wrap up this year, I want you to hold off on that urge to go to next year and take a few minutes to do something for you. Of course, you're going to relax and recharge this summer. Spend time with your kids and your family. Maybe you have some vacations. Or just some slow mornings with coffee, a good book, or just hours of sitting and doing nothing, watching your favorite trashy TV. All of it. But before you get into all of that summer goodness, I want you to take a moment to do something that your future self will thank you for. Reflect. Reflect on this year, because reflection is so critical. I wrote about how I think reflection is the most important step in Word Problem Workshop. It's what actually finalizes the experience that we had. Problem solving. But I believe that about everything. John Dewey has a famous quote, and it's my favorite. And so if you've been here for any number of episodes, you've probably heard it. But the quote is, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on that experience. And so we just had a whole experience this school year. We need to take a moment to reflect on it. In Word Problem Workshop in the book, I had a little picture created for each of the steps of Word Problem Workshop to help us visualize that step. And for reflection, the icon is a drop of water creating ripples in a pool. And what this icon, I believe, represents reflection, because I believe that's what it does. When we reflect, it helps us see how our actions have created ripples or impact, identifying our impact, but also the actions around that, around those ripples, move us beyond just a simple reflection, but really into considering, what did we do to make this impact? If you haven't read the book and you'd like to this summer, I'm working on a book club, monamath.com/book club, and you can check out the details there, okay? I did a book club over the winter, right after the book was released, and it was 5 or 6 Zoom sessions, and it was phenomenal. Every person who joined said they were glad they attended, glad they joined, and that it was helpful. But here's the thing. I don't have time for 5 Zoom sessions this summer, and neither do you. So I'm working on scaling it back, a few less Zoom sessions. But here's the thing. It's got to be Zoom, because we got to get on this bestie phone call like we are on right now on YouTube. And we got to talk about the book, right? You got to hear from other people what their perspective is on it. So if you're interested in joining the book club, it's going to be later in the summer. Head on over to monamath.com/book club for some details. So how can you reflect and have it actually be helpful before the end of the school year, before you go off into your summer adventures? I've got some ideas for you. I have like 5 buckets and a bonus of questions. But before we get into those, I want you to remember the students and who they were on day 1. I want you to think about August 2025, those little babies. Whether you teach kindergarten or 8th grade, they were babies. And as we reflect, here in a minute, I'm going to ask you some questions, and you can hit pause and just think or jot down your ideas. But as we reflect, I want you to think about the community that you created, the relationships. I want you to think about the family interactions you had and how those interactions helped you develop deeper relationships. I want you to think about things like your students' attention span and engagement and participation. I want you to think about your students' confidence, their passion, maybe even their willingness to struggle and try. How did that grow this year? I want you to think about the topics that you covered and what went really well and what was really hard, what worked, what could have been better. Get specific in these reflection questions, okay? So we're going to dive in to all 5 with a little bonus at the end. The first one is student growth and experience. What was the most significant change you saw, you witnessed, and how your students think or talk and engage in math this year? And I want you to give specific evidence, a moment, a strategy, or a student example that shows that change. Number 2, instructional shifts. What's the most important shift you made this year? How has your role in math changed? Again, is there a moment? Is there a strategy you tried? Do you have an example of something that worked really well? And then number 3, professional learning or coaching. What part of your professional learning or your coaching had the greatest impact on your teaching and why? And what specifically helped you move from learning to implementing? And maybe you didn't have any school-based PD. Maybe it was the podcast you listened to or an Instagram reel you saw, or maybe it was a book you were reading. What helped you take that learning and put it into practice? And what worked? Okay, I lost track of what number we're on, but the next one is impact and outcome. How has your math classroom changed as a result of this work you've done this year? What impact do you believe you've had on your students as learners of math? I love this question. I don't want you to just think about test scores, but that's one. But what about their confidence, their motivation, their identity as a mathematician? I think that was number 5. So number 6 is looking ahead. What's the most important area that you want to grow in next year? What's something you've been thinking about and you're like, okay, next year's the year? What support will help you make that growth possible? What do you need? What do you need to do to make sure that that happens? The other thing about these questions is you can also engage your students in these questions. Many of these questions I mentioned are perfect for students. Now, you can go over to my website, monamath.com/podcast, and then you just enter the podcast number. This is 212. So if you just go to monamath.com and you click on podcast, you'll see all these questions typed out that you can use with your students. Or if you're more of like a, let me sit down and jot down my reflection, do that. Go ahead over there. Every single podcast is not only a YouTube video, but it's also a blog post. So head on over, monamath.com, click on podcast, and you'll get all the details. For me, reflection brings up a lot to be grateful for. So as you're reflecting on these questions, I want you to take some time to let yourself be grateful to yourself. I know that sounds ridiculous, but think about it. What felt hard that you got through? That maybe it turned out well, but it felt hard. What really sucked this year, but resulted in something amazing? What are you glad you stuck with? Thank yourself for that. You did that. You deserve recognition. One of my favorite last day of school activities is reflection. And it's an activity that I actually learned at summer camp. I used to do it as a kid. It was so special then. And it's so special as a last day of school activity. Because the last day of school is like a mixed bag of emotions, right? There's reflection, but there's also gratitude. And then there's expressing this kind of deep sense of compassion for our kids and what we've built. There's a little bit of sadness, a little bit of get me the hell out of here, right? This activity, which I call back books, is so easy and so impactful. So let me tell you all about it. You just fold some paper, hamburger style, lined paper, maybe 10 sheets or so, fold it in half, maybe put a colored piece of paper for the cover. You're making a little book. And then where you staple it and then hole punch it and put a string through it. So you can wear it around your neck. So the string goes here and the book goes on your back. You got me? Okay. You can have the kids help you make them. You could send them home, have a parent help you make them. It's probably too late, maybe, I don't know, to do it this year, but hear me out. So the kids put the books on their back and they walk around the room or they sit down on the floor and they write in everybody's book. They write reflections, memories, maybe gratitudes or well wishes. Then once they've all written in each other's books, you take the book and you staple it close. and they can't read it until they leave the building for the summer. Some of my students would walk out the door, tear open the book, and see what their friends wrote. Others told me that they would save it to read in their bed that night. I love it. I always did one too, and some of the sweetest messages that I've ever gotten from kids came through the back book. So if you need an activity that takes quite a while and it's reflection for that last day of school, back books, do yourself a favor and do it. And if you do, let me know. But as we enter into summer, I want to give you like a little sneak peek of what you can expect from the podcast and from me with what we're going to be talking about here. So for the rest of June, it's kind of like we're going to make this shift. Now that we've reflected, we're going to start thinking about next school year. So we're going to think about how are we going to launch the year with a problem-solving mindset? And then we're going to dive in to your math block, the 6 elements that your math block needs and in order to create a classroom of problem solvers. So part 1 is all about word problem workshop and fitting it all in to creating that classroom of problem solvers. Part 2 is thinking routines or number sense routines. Part 3 is purposeful fluency. That's going to get us through June. And then in July, we're going to finish out that series of creating a classroom of problem solvers. And then we're going to get into like really the planning and how you fit each of those pieces in. So part 4 will be strategic instruction. Then we have student engaged assessment. And then part 6 is identity and belonging. So each of those is going to be explaining what that piece of your math block should look like and planning for how to include it. Then at the very end of July, we are going to start a community series, and it's 5 things every community needs. And so in July, at the end, we're going to start with math norms. And then in August, we're going to dive into all the other things that you need to start building a community in your math class. Even if you are a self-contained teacher and you teach all the things and you're like, girl, we do SEL, we do morning meeting, we have a community. I hear you, but math's different. Just like reading's different, right? You create your classroom community of readers and come alongside me, writers, right? So math is different. I've been saying this for 5 years, you guys. So then we're going to dive into routines, relationships, expectations, how to practice all of those things with a little bit of fun. We're going to link it to activities that you can use to practice that are fun. So things like math monsters or mapping our brain, but we're teaching our math routines and norms through that. So fun. All of those things you're going to need for your first month of school. And then as we end August, we're going to go into a new series all about the thinking routines or those number sense routines that build curiosity and wonder and reasoning and mathematical mindsets as well as number sense. So get ready because we are going to be going through all of the thinking routines that are going to get your kids thinking on day 1 of school. Okay, so that's the rest of the summer. It is jam-packed. Every single episode is so useful. Speaking of series, this is a new way I would like to end the podcast with a may you. It's a bit like a cheers, a toast to you. Okay, I would like to leave you with this. May you take time to see this year as a success. May you find the moments that your students' eyes lit up. May you remember that the community was built through your strategic moves, your caring and respect, and your hard work. May you take time to remember yourself that this work is the stone that creates the ripple in the water. And may you enjoy your summer of recharging so that you can continue to serve the world and our students with the fullness of your capacity and compassion. Have a great end of school year. I will see you right back here on Monday. Bye, friend.